and 99% of the time, you're going to listen to him, right? You coming in, you're 20, 21, 22 years old, and this guy that's already put in the work 10 plus years, and they pulling you to the side, man, hey, young fella, this is what you should do when this happens. This is what happened to me. And they automatically going to, have your ear. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the childish, guys dancing in the locker room, smiling after losses. That shit wouldn't have took place back when we played. Like, it was no way in hell you coming back in that locker room and smiling when Lorenzo Neal was in there. If we lost and you're walking there smiling, one of those old guys is grabbing you up and saying, we don't do that here. And a lot of that, man, is missing in today's game, in my opinion.
Welcome, Chargers fans. Welcome to the Greenlight Pod YouTube page. I feel for you, man. I don't know what, it was like a waste of the last couple of years. I mean, but onward and upward, right? The question I'm going to ask you today, and of course, the video that you're going to see is an interview with me and Shawne Merriman, who was awesome in San Diego. I used to watch him play when I wasn't playing yet. I was like riding the bench at Virginia my first year and watched Shawne Merriman like 30 feet away from me. And I was like, this guy is a fucking monster, and had a great career. Obviously injuries shortened that. But yeah, Shawne, we're going to talk about the MMA stuff that he's got going on with Lights Out. We're going to talk about the old NFL. We're going to talk about that 2006 Chargers team, because I think, the MVP conversation right now, there's something to call back to with that, because that's when LT won it. And maybe this year it's not a quarterback. We'll see. But my question that I always ask you guys, the fans, is this. Usually I go with something off the wall, but I'm going to ask you something that's topical. Who should be the coach next year? Any answer is the right answer. Nobody knows. Get creative if you want to. Who's going to be the coach next year? Who should be the coach? If you're Dean Spanos, who are you hiring and why? Leave that in the comments. If you like this interview, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, and hopefully you visit again. Good luck the rest of the season. And the sooner next year can get here, the better, right? But I am pulling for you guys. Here's Shawne Merriman. All right, here's somebody that used to play for Maryland, and I never liked Maryland. And when I was a little guy, I was standing on the sidelines waiting to go in the game. I used to watch this beast, man, for Maryland. Him and Heath Miller battling. I mean, just some of the ACC legends in my mind, and Shawne Merriman is one of them. Welcome to the show, Shawne. How you doing, dude?
I'm good, bro. You?
I'm good, man. It's good to catch up. I know we've caught up a couple times since we were players, but just was always a big fan of yours and excited to see all the stuff you're doing outside football. And I guess I just want to start there, man. Like, we were BSing off camera about, like, how are you able to do this stuff, like pummeling with these strong guys, and like I know you're not like competing all the time, but yeah, just to be doing the MMA stuff after football is crazy to me. I do boxing, and I got an arthritic shoulder, and I had to stop like 2 weeks ago. I had to start like a rehab plan. Like, how the hell do you do it, dude?
Honestly, man, it's been consistency. Like we talked, man, I think that my biggest fear, like, honestly, is that when I stop, I'm going to start feeling the shoulders, the knees, the hips, the lower backs, So for me, man, like when I retired, I got straight in full-time MMA. I still now even spar once or twice a week. At Extreme Couture, Randy Couture's gym, or I go to Top Rank with some of the boxes over there. And I think for me, man, it's been consistency, because I think that one day I'll wake up and all that shit that, that we did, right, you'll start remember those big hits, those cut blocks, those like, oh, man, I rolled my ankle, I tweaked my back. And I think that if I stop, then one day it'll catch up to me.
It's funny. I was just talking to somebody last night, a guy who plays right now, and he has an injury, and he was like, we were talking about how to treat it, because I'd had the same thing. And I was like, are they giving you Toradol shots? Like, do they do that anymore? And he was like, nah, they don't do it anymore. Like, now they'll just give you the pill, which is like a half measure in my opinion. Like, I was getting vitamin T every week before I played. And I'm sure that's part of the reason I feel the way I feel now. Like, we both played in the old NFL. before the new CBA, before the hits got penalized and all that stuff. Like, what was it way different back then in your estimation with how they treated injuries and the way you treated your pain?
Yeah, because remember, and I don't know if this is the case with you guys, but remember the time when if you had a third party opinion, right? If you had a doctor outside the organization, you had your own fitness workout team, your own, like they didn't want you to have, back when we played, it was like a cardinal sin for you to get a third opinion somewhere, or a secondary opinion outside the NFL, or outside the team. And now it's like all these guys got their own coaches doing the workout during the off season, their own nutritionists, their own doctors. But when we did it, man, they used to frown upon it, and I think that ultimately kind of bit them in the ass, because there was lawsuit left and right. Toradol,
Yeah.
for example, right? The Toradol, we all lined up. Remember the training room before?
Oh, it was like a line at the carnival to get a shot in the ass.
And your ass is out. Like everybody's ass is halfway down for their pants, waiting to get a Toradol shot. And I think that because of the information that's out there now, and the NFL dealing with lawsuits and different things like that, now they're like, okay, we're not doing a Toradol no more. Hey, if you want to go work out with your outside masseuse or therapist or nutritionist, go ahead, because we can't stop it anymore. So the times are definitely different now, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, no. When I got to one of my later chapter in my career, and I had a new coach and new trainers, they came in before the game, and I'm like, I pulled my pants down because I wanted to get the shot, and they were like, "What are you doing?" They were like, "We don't give shots," and I was like, "Well, we don't play." I was like, so you need to go get the coach and talk to the coach about that one, because you're going to be down a guy. And so the coach comes in and he looks at the trainers and he catches up on what's going on, and he's like, well, give him a damn Toradol shot. So I mean, like the old NFL has definitely gone by the wayside with the lawsuits and that sort of thing, but it's tough for players now because the game's not less physical.
Right.
It's still very physical, and all that stuff you mentioned. It's just crazy. It's illuminating when people hear about what it used to be like. The old NFL was crazy. Another thing was we came into our locker room, and I know you had, because I looked at your locker room when you were a rookie, because I wanted to ask you about some of the guys, and I sorted it by birthday. You played with a guy that was born in 1962. There were like old vets in those rooms because they weren't trying to get those old guys out of the rooms. And I walked into a meeting room full of Leonard Little, Fred Robbins, all those guys, that had played decades of football. And I think that's a real tool that guys don't get now. You don't get to learn from those guys. Those are even more valuable than the coaches.
I think that's where the NFL and the teams have lost at tremendously. When I came in, I had Randall Godfrey, Donnie Edwards, Jamal Williams, Keenan McCardell was there, Lorenzo Neal. Like, these guys have been 10 plus years in the league, man, and that to me was always invaluable, because even when my young guys was acting up or getting out of line, like those old heads would grab you up and say, man, you need to chill, right?
Yeah.
Or this is what I did when this happened to me. And so I think that's where a lot of these locker rooms are lost at, man. Like, you need that old head. You need that enforcer. You need that experience in there, because some of these guys already said and did it. And 99% of the time, you're going to listen to them, right? You coming in, you're 20, 21, 22 years old, and this guy that's already put in the work 10 plus years, and they pulling you to the side, man, hey, young fella, this is what you should do when this happens. This is what happened to me. And they automatically going to, have your ear. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the childish, guys dancing in the locker room, smiling after losses. That shit wouldn't have took place back when we played. Like, it was no way in hell you coming back in that locker room and smiling when Lorenzo Neal was in there. If we lost and you're walking there smiling, one of those old guys is grabbing you up and saying, we don't do that here. And a lot of that, man, is missing in today's game, in my opinion.
And also, I think, I'm an oldest brother. Like, I'm the oldest of three, so I never had a big brother. Now, I had, my dad's, a big force in my life, but there's something unique about having a big brother. And, walking in those locker rooms, and, like James Hall for me was a guy that had played a long time, played in Detroit, was a baller, but never played on good teams. And he was miserable, but he definitely taught me a lot. And it's not just like the football, it's also life. I mean, it's like your finances, the pitfalls for guys that might be single coming in the NFL, like talking to them about the the pitfalls of being out on the social scene and things that can happen to you, and you got to be careful of this, that, and the third, because I think nowadays these kids are even more visible and they got more money in their pockets right away outside the CBA change and that sort of thing. But like, you're very vulnerable to a lot of people pulling at you. And I think having those older guys is awesome. What was it like in that locker room when you had Brees and Rivers, and like, what were guys saying internally about that process?
Well, I got spoiled, man. Like I really did, because I didn't. You don't. Not too often you get a chance to walk into a situation like that. Like Drew was one of the most locked in, dedicated, focused, laser driven. He was going straight to the weight room. He was going straight to the film room. He was like always on course for his destiny. That's how locked in he was. Phil was the opposite. Phil would go down the hallway. You hear him talking shit to people walking by, in the weight room. He's talking this. He never stopped. It was like a competitive thing. Those freestyle Fridays, Phil would jump in and do his little part, man. Like everything.
Really?
Oh, dude. Like,
did Phil have bars?
So this is the thing with Phil, man. Phil was like, take your hottest radio track, whatever the hottest commercial radio song that there was on, right? So we would play it all the time in the locker room before we go out. And you ever heard like when somebody say, "Don't watch what you say around kids," right? Because they pick everything up. Like that was Phil. Whatever we did around him, he noticed and picked up on everything. How somebody walk, how they talk, what they were, freestyle Fridays, like a term, a slang that we would use. Like
where you'd be like, "Damn, I thought you were out of touch, dude. You've been listening."
No, dude, dude, it's the wildest thing ever. And I got 1,000 Phil stories, man. But I think one that really stick out is, we'll be in the defensive film room or the linebacker meeting room, and we're watching film of the previous game or the upcoming game or whatever, and we hear somebody walking down the hallway and somebody's rapping. We like, what? And we walk by and it's Phil. And we just burst out, start laughing, man, because it may be the song that we just finished listening to in the locker room that he just picked up on, and now he's rapping about it. So, but it was, like I said, I don't want to take anything away from Drew, because Drew was he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, great quarterback. But I think Phil, when we had Phil, Phil was more suited for the team that we had, right? We was talking a lot, man. We were very like, flamboyant and, light up big names. And Phil kind of fit right in this thing because he was always going to fire back at all times.
Yeah. No, I mean, incredible to have both those guys in the same building, and it worked out for both teams. I've heard people say that Phil never cusses, but I know Phil cusses because one time on the field he called me a cuss word. And so I don't know if you can confirm that you ever heard Phil cuss, but I've heard it.
I never heard it. One day we were getting after them pretty good in practice, turnovers, and we would jump in Phil's face and point at him and touch him and stuff after, play around and piss him off. And I thought that I almost got him to cuss one time. He was so mad, and he didn't. And that's what I knew, that there was no way at that point to get him to curse, because I had him we had him to the point where we were talking so bad to him in practice, picking the ball off. Crow had an interception, turn around, Quentin Jammer had an interception. I'm batting down passes from the line of scrimmage and getting this close to his face and pointing at him. And that one time I thought he was going to curse. And when he didn't do it then, I figured that nobody was going to get Phil.
No, he did it. He did it. He like came out of the gate and called me a name, and then we sacked him like a bunch, and I sacked him twice. But it was eye-opening for me. I was like, oh, this guy with the minivan, and 9 kids, really does, he does cuss. So, I've heard he doesn't, but he does. With that 2006 team, I've heard you say this over the last calendar year. I forget when it was, but you were like, we might be the best team that never won the bowl. And I think it's an interesting point you bring up. Why do you think that, and how good was that team, and what was it that kept you guys from getting there?
Well, a lot of people are saying, I think it was that 07 Patriots team, right, or whatever. Yeah, that 07. So, people compare it to that because they were good and they got Super Bowls and whatnot. But if you look at how dominant we were in all phases of the game, in every position in 2006, we didn't have a weak spot. And we wasn't going out and just winning games. We were beating people pretty bad. And I think we had, 60-something sacks as a team, almost 70 sacks, something like that. We were up there. Wade Phillips was D coordinator. Marty Schottenheimer was the head coach. Greg Manunsky was my linebacker coach, and the assistant linebacker coach was John Pagano. Like we were so stacked from the head coach all the way down to the players, man. It was insane. And I don't have a lot of regrets. One of my I guess one of my other regrets would be playing when I wasn't healthy, right? Like
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
going back out there, toughing it out. If I can change that part of my career, I would have sat my ass out, got healthy, and got back on the field when I was ready to go instead of, trying to play the warrior spirit game and get back out there hobbling
Because they
around.
don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care. You find that out. You're like, oh, everybody's going to care. You walk around the building. You're like, everybody's looking at me. They think I'm soft. I'm not playing. Even though you know you're not soft. You play that game in your head, and then you go out there and look like shit, and they don't thank you.
No, in fact, they'll use it against you, especially when it's
Yep.
time to negotiate, right? And I tell any younger guy when I talk to him, I say, listen, if you're not 100% or close to 100%, and you go out there and you're hobbling around at 50% and you hurt yourself, that 1 week injury turns into a lingering 4.
Yeah.
No one's going to come up to you and say, man, way to go. Way to get back out there, way to find a way back on the field. They're gonna say, yeah, well, you didn't make any plays. You've been gone
You look
because you've been
different.
just a body out there. So I tell all these guys, man, get healthy. The other thing is, not winning a ring. Like we
Yeah.
had a legit shot, I would say between 2005 and 2010 to win one ring for sure, but possibly 2 or 3. And the fact that we didn't, that part still bothers me, man, because we had Hall of Fame guys, Antonio Gates and Phillip Rivers, LT. I played with 4 or 5 Hall of Famers, right?
Yeah.
And for us not to have a ring during that time, it still gets under my skin pretty good.
You mentioned Marty Schottenheimer, and like he has a reputation for being fiery. Like I met him once or twice, and his son Brian coached the Rams for a little bit, so got to be around. Really nice guy, when I met him, and I just couldn't imagine some of the things that I heard he used to say. And I think Eminem had a line cursing at you players like Marty Schottenheimer in one of his raps, and that was the first time I ever heard as a kid that like Marty Schottenheimer's a hard ass. He must have a reputation. And then I heard that they based, this is 2 pop culture things for him, the movie with Al Pacino, Any Given Sunday. They based his speeches off Marty. Now, have you seen the movie? Do you see the similarity? Like, what was Marty talking to the team like?
It was so crazy. So Marty, he loves you to death. Like he cared about you, but he was hard, man. Like some days he'll come up right before practice starts. As soon as we get done stretching, he'll tap 2 guys on the shoulder, Oklahoma drill, to start the practice off. I mean, he was that, and he
Damn,
might,
dude.
yeah, oh yeah, he might come to you like a few days later in training camp after we've had 4 or 5 double. Remember, we
had the double days.
we had double days. All this 1 practice, 2 practice, 1 practice shit is we didn't. That was out the question. We went double days back to back until you got that 1 day off to go to a theme park, water park, or whatever the hell they wanted to do, and you turned into an 11-year-old.
The movies.
The movies, right? The movies.
Hey, if this guy catches a punt, we're going to the movies. And part of me was always like, can I just fucking go home?
Right.
But you go to the movies and it's better than sitting in meetings.
Oh, 100%. And you're like at that point, we all like 11-year-old kids out there just got released out the house for the first time, right? Just happy as hell. Anything sounded better than watching film after practice. And then so Marty, he'll come up one day, Oklahoma drill, tap you. Then 3, 4 days, 5 days after you have 5 good practices in a row, he'll tap you and tell you to stay out of 9-on-7 and stay out of the 1-on-1s, right? To try to take care of guys. So that's who he was. In fact, man, my rookie year, when I had the big hit against Priest Holmes, I actually had a big hit against Priest Holmes, and he was knocked. I knocked him out. And I got up and I was celebrating because I'm just a big hit. I'm going.
You don't know, yeah, you don't know.
I'm 21 years old, and so man, I'm celebrating. The big hit, got the team excited, and I got over to the sideline, and Marty Schottenheimer had grabbed my face mask, and he said, "Shawne, great hit, but don't forget that this guy's family, his friends are watching." Because Priest Holmes was still out on the ground. He was still knocked out on the side when I was on the sideline, walked over. And so that's who Marty was. The other thing is, man, I think that what it really come down to is he had these speeches, and I'm not lying to you, man. I've had tons of really good great coaches.
Yeah.
Marty had this way of speaking to have you ready to run through a wall, and I'm not joking. And his speeches were so damn passionate, and after you get this whole spirit, and we had so many that he would start to tear up. So we, after a while, we started to bet in the team meeting room. Everybody would bring a couple $100, 20s,
Mm-hmm.
hundreds, 50s, whatever. And so we all had the clock when he talked in the team meeting room was right behind the wall. And so we all had a time of how long it was going to take before he teared up. And
That's
when he
so
teared
fucking
up,
great.
his bottom lip, man, started trembling. And so we knew that was the forecast that it was coming, that he
Mm-hmm.
was about to start tearing up. So you mind you, everybody got the hundreds, the money, the cash with them. And so a minute hit the clock, and you hear, so so a minute and a half go, and then he started to
Yeah.
cry, to tear
Yeah.
up, and all you heard was the guys in there like, damn.
Instead of like dudes are celebrating. He's like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
Like, bro, that's the best, man. Side betting little bullshit. That was like some of my favorite stuff in the NFL. And by the way, the plane trips. I know now you can't drink beer on the plane, which I heard, as of last year is like a no-no there. We used to drink on the plane, and we used to gamble on the plane. Now, I stayed out of the Boo-Ray games, and I stayed out of the, but
dominoes.
like the dominoes. But literally, the minute you walk on the plane, it's like, hey, put your per diem in here. We're gonna have the flight attendant read the winning ticket and shit like that, and then a rookie would win, and Malcolm would get up and be like, nah, rookie's not winning. Like the old NFL was a lot of fun, and I wonder like how those plane rides were for you, because now I think it's way different.
Oh, everything is completely censored. Everything. And the problem is now is that all this is fun. The dominoes, the card games, guys, it was betting. It was nothing but gambling all the time. Guys whipping out
All
a
the
couple
time.
grand here. Training camp, you can forget about it. You'll see guys right after that last practice, 3-4 hours after practice, still playing dominoes, card games, spades, or whatever. Thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes will just be flown across the table, and now you can't even do that, because if once it get out, you can't even control the narrative or story. Some it'll get out in a bad way,
Well, now
right?
because gambling's a part of the whole NFL ethos, where they got to make a lot of money off gambling, and fans can't differentiate. They think when they hear guys are gambling on the plane, and there's $20,000 change in hand, they're thinking, oh, these guys are corrupt, even though it's not sports gambling. They just don't want you to hear about that stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like somebody, the narrative will get out there. The guys are gambling on the plane, right? Nobody's saying they're playing cards. Nobody's playing dominoes or anything else. It's gambling, and so
Yeah.
people would run with that narrative. So I think that in a way, I don't fault a lot of the young guys. Even when we talk about the hits and how the style of play guys are now, I don't fault them, man, because when you see Josh Jacobs getting hit for 21 or 22,000 for just lowering his head, running a guy over, or you see a safety getting 4 game suspension for just making a play on the ball, like how
That
how,
was a
how do you
bad
want
one.
how do you want guys to
Yeah,
go out there and play?
I don't know either. And a lot of people will try to tell you exactly how they would do it, but they don't understand the speed of that game. I think we're both talking about it because he hit a couple weeks ago where, like, well, you could just take the ball off him. I'm like, the weight of the ball is the body. Like, there's no other way to take that ball off him for those guys. And so, I think it's tough now. I mean, it really is. And in a lot of ways, the NFL is easier, but the NFL has become harder in some ways. And I think that's one of them. When you talk about the 2006 team, though, I think it's a very relevant conversation right now with the MVP conversation, because the MVP more than any time I've ever been alive feels like the Heisman Trophy, where, if you play one bad game at the wrong time late in the season, you probably don't win that award anymore. And the way we pile on quarterbacks week to week, the narratives, the way they change week to week, it really does change the odds on MVP, the whole thing. And right now, it feels like because of the process of elimination, you could end up in a situation where if Lamar plays bad this weekend, we could be looking at Christian McCaffrey. We could be looking at Cheetah. And, you always think of it as a quarterback award, but in 2006, LT won it. and he deserved it. And I wonder if you see anybody in the NFL today that you think is deserving outside of a quarterback. Would you give it to a quarterback this year? Or would you give it to somebody like an LT?
Yeah, I'm going with Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill. And the reason why I'm saying this is because next year somebody's going to have Dak's numbers. Next year somebody's going to have Patrick Mahomes' numbers. Next year somebody's going to have Lamar Jackson's numbers, right? So if those numbers are easier or easily attainable,
more normal,
then you have to start looking somewhere else, right? Like you just do. And if Tyreek Hill didn't get hurt, he may be 2,000 yards plus in receiving.
Which is once in a lifetime.
So I hope that whoever's on that voting committee, whatever they're doing over there, they start to look outside of somebody in the quarterback position, because honestly, the quarterback position this year, there's nobody that's standing out amongst everybody where it's a clear-cut winner. This is the first year probably in a long time where you can't say, hey, that's the MVP and they ain't even close.
Well, that's what happens when Mahomes got a bunch of guys outside who aren't doing anything right, and then you've got Joe Burrow hurt and all these guys hurt and the whole thing. Actually, another thing is, like, a guy I would mention would be Josh Allen. Like, he could be a dark horse if he plays lights out the next 2 weeks and the other guys play poorly. That's a team that would have to go win it the hard way. And in 2006, and I remember this, I was in college, and I remember the exact playoff scenario and the whole thing. Like, Pittsburgh was like a wild card team, and they had to go on the road and win that thing in Seattle against the Seahawks in Detroit. I think that's where the Super Bowl was. It's the fucking weirdest Super Bowl place ever. But do you think there's a team like that this year that could go on the road and win the whole thing?
Lions. I don't know if the Lions are on the road.
Well, I mean, they might have to be on the road at least once for San Francisco, and they got the tie break with Philly, but that could change if they lose to Dallas.
I said before the season, I like the Lions because of how they finished the last season, how they kind of rolled into it. Lions are the team that you don't want to face. Now, you won't say that as a player. You won't say it publicly. But they're the team you really don't want to face, right? Playing tough defense, running the ball well, very physical. And their style of play is a team that you don't want to play. It was almost like last year with the Jags when they kicked the Chargers out.
Yeah.
You don't like to play those type of teams, man, because they're gritty. They're not going to make a whole lot of mistakes. They're going to play you hard for 4 quarters. You're going to get their best for 4 quarters. There ain't no letting up, right? They're going to pound the ball 3-4 yards, 5 yards, 2 yards, quick passes, turnovers on defense. Those are the teams you don't want to play. Like, you know what you're going to get out of Dallas Cowboys. You know what you're going to get out of the 49ers. And we've seen them have a couple of spots. Even Philly, man. And I was on Philly's, kind of bandwagon the whole entire year because I felt that they were just disrespected. They were like the most disrespected 10-1 team we ever seen in the
because it's so hard to come off of a Super Bowl, whether you win it or lose it, and be any good the next year.
Yeah, because for one, the target is on your back, right? You're the defending Super Bowl playing team. You're walking to every week, and every week somebody's getting up for you, getting everybody's best every single week. And so that's why when people were on Philly, I was like, dude, relax. Now we've seen a couple games where like they got some chinks in the armor. They got some holes there that they need to patch up. But all in all, man, that was like when people were talking trash about them at 10-1. I'm like, dude, you know how many teams in the NFL will barely like to win at 10-1?
I mean, exactly. I mean, I said that on my pod last week because there's a lot of Eagles fans that listen to this and the whole thing, and I'm just like, hey, man, if 8 years ago you were 10-3 or whatever it is, and you got a chance to win the division, maybe you're not the best team in the league, but you got a fighting chance. And I think with the NFL, the ceiling is lower. When you talk about the Chiefs this year, because I was pounding on the table for the Chiefs, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to figure it out. But the point is, the Chiefs are down, but so is the field. And, a lot of these teams can look at the field and say, hey, a bunch of these quarterbacks got hurt. There's a path for us. And so I think it's interesting that way. And when you talk about the Chargers, I think you and I have one thing in common for sure, and that's we both played for organizations that have since moved. And, like for me, it was like I got cut my 8th year, got hurt, got cut. Went to New England, and that very offseason, the Rams moved to L.A. And that's a little different than, I guess, San Diego moving to L.A. But there's nowhere for me to go home to, you know what I mean? And I don't know about you. How normal does it feel right now with the Chargers playing in LA? It's only an hour away, but it feels like a world away, I'm sure, for fans.
Yeah, and you know the fan bases are different, right?
Yeah.
Because San Diego fans and people don't like LA people. And
Yeah.
that was the biggest. It wasn't even a distance. It was just that San Diego people fans didn't like
You get my
LA.
team. Where the fuck do you get off getting my team?
Right, and it was a slap in the face to San Diego fans, and then they did a great job at rebuilding the LA fan base because it wasn't like that. Like when they went to that
Yeah.
soccer stadium, it was 50-50 in there.
Dude, they were on silent count when we went there in 18. We went to with the Eagles, we went to StubHub and they were on silent count. I was getting a great jump off the ball and we're on the road.
Right, no, and so they did a great job at doing it. I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
for me, man, because of the proximity was so close, and I was always in LA doing a ton of TV and sitcoms and TV shows, and doing a broadcasting thing on the sports network. So I was already there. So when
Mhm.
they made that transition, it was almost like it's the same fan base that watched me play, at least in San Diego. Watched a lot of us play in San Diego, like Antonio Gates and LT.
Mhm.
Philip came back for the first time for Antonio Gates. For his Hall of Fame thing.
Induction, yeah.
So Philip Rivers came back, and it was good to see him. But
Yeah.
it's almost the same fan base. A lot of fans still came up, and obviously they did a really good job rebuilding that LA fan base because it wasn't always like that.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I got to be careful. I don't have anything against the LA Rams. I don't. I guess I still got buddies on that team. As years go by, it's just Aaron Donald now. But it's hard for me to go show up to that game and put on a jersey and sit in the stands, and because people in St. Louis they took it so viscerally. It's like they have Super Bowl parties without the game on. That's how much they hate the NFL, and so. Like that's really hard. And I know for you, you're working in it and it's a little bit different, but it is a weird feeling. Like for me, you kind of feel like NFL homeless. But for you, being so close, maybe it's better.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me was when they had me to announce the draft. I think
Yeah.
it was 2000, the one that was in Tennessee. And you going out, there's 100,000+ people out there. So the first thing you're already thinking, like, okay, let me not mess this up, right? Let me
Mm-hmm.
not mess this whole thing up. And I got a hard name, and Nasir Adderley, right? The safety,
Yeah.
the DB they drafted, Nasir Adderley. So I got a hard name, and I got to remember not to say San Diego Chargers.
Yeah, that's the
Because
hardest one.
that was the hardest one. And we've seen people go out there and misspell Jets, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it's when you get out there, it's like, oh shit, there's 100,000+ people out there. Let me not screw this thing up. So I got the card. I keep saying Nasir Natalie. I got that down. All right, next. Don't say San Diego Chargers. And I think for a lot of people, even the national media, still right now, once in a while, you'll still catch some of these guys saying
I do
San
it on,
Diego
on my
Chargers.
show. I do it on my show sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's tough, man. Fuck, man. I mean, like, San Diego fans, I don't know much about that fan base, but I know it's hard for any fan base. And then, like, for you you played in probably two of the most polar opposite places, like temperature, city, like, quote unquote quality of life. But it seems like Buffalo, if you play up there when they're good, like the quality of life's pretty good for a player. Now, what was it like going from San Diego to Buffalo, and how cool is that place, like, when it comes to football, and how different is it when it comes to life?
So I didn't want to go.
Really?
I was literally I was scratching and screaming not to go. So Buddy Nix, who's the general manager there with the Bills, he actually was number two behind AJ Smith with the Chargers.
Yeah.
Buddy Nix actually is the one who drafted me with the Chargers. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I was getting waived by the Chargers, I had like 4 or 5 teams to claim. I think me and Randy Moss was on the waivers that same year, and we had the most teams ever to pick to kind of
Claims,
put in,
yeah.
our names in the hat. And so I was claimed by like 3 other teams that I really wanted to go to. Dolphins being one of them, and I talked to Stephen Ross. Stephen Ross, he called me, and we talked on the phone for like 20, 30 minutes. Great conversation. He's like, man, we want you down here. And I was like, perfect, I'm going to Miami. But Buffalo had the worst record. Buffalo, when you get waived, their worst record get first dibs.
It's
And I
fucked
think
up.
Buffalo was like 0-5, 0-6. Buddy Nix called me. He said, He said, Shawne, we want you out here. We want you in the locker room. And I know you're not the player you once was. You had some injuries, whatever, but I think you can really help this team out. And you're going to love Buffalo. Trust me. I said, Buddy Nix, I love you. I'm not coming.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I told him. I said, tell Ralph Wilson and the Wilson family, I apologize. I don't
All
want to
due respect. I just
There's no disrespect.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even there was Buffalo. It was a combination of it being Buffalo and them 0-6. They had no path to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so I said, Buddy, I love you. I said, after the season, I'll come and see you guys because I'll finish the rest of the season out. But give me a chance to go somewhere where we at least going to have a chance to go to the playoffs. He said, Shawne, I hear what you're saying, but I'm putting in your contract and you're coming here to Buffalo. Trust me, you're going to love it. I said, Buddy, trust me, I'm not coming, right? And, dude, I swore up and down. I hung up the phone. I hung up the phone on Buddy Nix and Mr. Wilson, right? I hung it up, and I was so pissed off because I was telling them that I was like, I didn't want to come. They called me back 15 minutes later and said, hey, we put your contract in. We'll see you soon. I said, well, I don't give a shit what y'all do because I'm not coming, right? They said, Shawne, if you don't show up, it's $25,000 fine a day.
You got to retire.
I said, look, what time that plane gonna be here? So
yeah, 25. That's 25, dude.
They said it was on Tuesday. They said we'll send it on Wednesday. I said, could you guys do me a favor and send a plane on Thursday? And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, seriously, because
really,
we had a great fan base with the Chargers, but we also had stars to the team, and we won a lot of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got one of the best running backs of all time. You got the best tight end of all time. You got one of the best quarterbacks. It wasn't hard to come and see us play. We won a lot of games.
Yeah.
Buffalo, they were showing up regardless. And no matter what. I showed up there, they were 0-6, I believe, and I looked into the stadium, and there were people out 55 plus thousand still, shirts off, screaming, going nuts, and I never saw anything like that before in my life, and I actually got really close to the fans. Do the fans there in Buffalo treat you like you're a second or third cousin? They'll see you and be like, yo, what's up, lights? I'm like, damn. But it was the best thing that ever could have happened to me, man, because I wish that everybody could experience that at least one time in their lifetime.
You guys had to go to Toronto some to get out in the nightlife, right?
I was every Friday.
You were in Toronto every Friday. You were leaving the country every Friday night. And the drinking on Fridays, the hanging out on Fridays, like that never bothered you? Because I tried it once early in my career, fucking with those old heads. They're like, we're going to the hotel bar. We were up in Seattle and, had a couple cran and vodkas I'll never forget. And Saturday I was like, man, I feel like shit. Like, I don't. So you guys were hitting the streets on Fridays? Every Friday. And you know what? In fact, I tried to do the opposite, right? Because I think A.J. Smith, the general manager there, has something to come out in the papers about, me not in particular, not being focused on football, and I was, celebrity, and I care about TV and all this other shit. So I said, you know what? I'm not going out no more, and I'm just straight and narrow. I'm gonna stay in the house, go watch film, whatever. I did that shit for 2 weeks. I was miserable. Really? I was miserable. It was two of my worst weeks. You were conditioned to have a hangover on Saturday during the walkthrough. That was part of the normal routine for you. Yeah, I was off if I didn't. That's so good, dude. I mean, it's so funny to me thinking about guys in Buffalo. I just feel like Buffalo is a place where if you don't go to Toronto and you stay in Buffalo, you probably get drunker in Buffalo than any city because it just seems like a good drinking city. Like I would love to hit a couple of the dive bars in Buffalo. What's the best bar in Buffalo? Downtown on Chippewa. Okay. Downtown Chippewa, they were loaded with nice bars and lounges, and I mean, yeah. I remember going up there to play, and it was all overcast and dreary late in the year, and sitting in the hotel on Saturday and being like, I just have this urge to go get fucked up. Like, this city just does it to you, right? Like, you just want to go out drinking with these people. One of these days, I'm going to get there. I'll let them throw me through a table. We'll do that for the pod. We'll go up to Buffalo, guys. All right, so with MMA, I guess my big question is, number one, Lights Out Extreme Fighting, January 6th, big fight, Nakatani and Marte. Okay, so I'm excited. I'm going to check it out. You can catch it on Fubo Sports. I got like 5 smart TV apps I don't know how to use. I got to figure out how to use Fubo. But my whole thing is, with the mentality that these fighters have, and I've trained with a couple of them, and they're different dudes. Like, do you see commonalities between the NFL guys and fighters, and what can you teach a guy? Like, if a guy doesn't have that mentality, can you make him a fighter?
No, no, but this is why that we transition as far as football players transition well more than any other sport, right, over to combat sports because we're already used to contact. We're not afraid to start to learn and be, pick up things on a repetitive basis, right? Because
Yeah.
we're just creatures of habit of wanting to get better at something. Um, I believe, and I got a couple big guys, former guys, one Super Bowl champ, big D lineman that I'm going to make a contract offer to right after the holiday.
And it's
Um,
confidential right now. We don't
yeah,
know
it's
who that is.
confidential, but I've
Can I
been in
get three
talk
guesses? You know I
three
love
years.
guessing shit. I want three guesses. I need one hint. Okay, so he was a Super Bowl champion D lineman.
Yep.
All right, so he probably's got length. All right, so he's probably an edge guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and did he play?
Interior and edge, but mostly interior. Yep.
Okay, okay, and he's still playing or he's not playing?
He's retired.
Okay, and he won a Super Bowl with the NFC or the AFC?
AFC.
AFC. Okay, so the Broncos could be a team newly retired. Broncos, AFC. Who else won the Super Bowl the last couple of years? I'm gonna look this up here, Shawne, before we get Super Bowl champions. I don't think it's a New England guy. List the Super Bowl champion. I missed that. There was a body language cue there I missed. Okay, we've got Super Bowl champions. Okay, we got the Bucks won it, the Rams won it, the Chiefs won it. Okay, but I can't think of anybody. The New England. I think it's a Denver Bronco. Okay, I think it might be a Denver Bronco, dude. And I'm gonna
Yep.
go through the roster later, and I'm gonna text you and see if I'm right.
Oh yeah.
But so, what's the number one thing? Not to get back on it. What's the number one thing you're looking for with
I
guys?
think I know people got their own personal feelings towards Greg Hardy, right?
Yeah,
But if you look at Greg actually looked pretty damn good when he's early on in the UFC. And this is a guy that only been training 2 years before he took a fight against a championship fighter. He fought championship rounds. And the only thing about Greg was lazy as shit. He got overweight. He didn't, really train. He wasn't consistent. There's going to be a heavyweight champ. There's going to be a light heavyweight champ, that's going to happen here in MMA within the next 6 to 12 months, or at least 12 months. A champion there was a former NFL guy, or former Alabama, or
interesting.
former Florida State, or Florida. Like, there's going to be a former football player that's going to be a world champion shortly. I guarantee, because for one, there's money in the sport. Like when I retired, people ask me all the time why I didn't fight. They were offering peanuts when I retired in 2013, and I was like, I was ahead of the game because I said, look, I got a name from playing football. I've been around the sport and fighting for a long time. I remember the money I asked for. They looked at me crazy, and I said,
What'd
"Dude,
you
this is
ask
going
for?
to be a $500,000,
Yeah,
$500,000." And so I said, "Look, it's going to be worth it. I'm going to promote the hell out of it. Put me in against a former WWE guy, a former football player, and we'll sell the shit out of this thing. And we'll get after it. Put on a hell of a show for all the fans." And I asked for $500,000. They were like, their jaw dropped. Now, for a big name guy to have that size fight on a pay-per-view,
yeah.
that's a starting point.
Yeah, I
Now,
think Nate Robinson probably made more money. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
Nate,
Like,
I think
it's,
Nate made between $400,000 and $600,000. I think he made closer to
it's
700,000.
crazy. Yeah.
And so the money and opportunity is there. So that's why you see more of these guys transitioning and from football into MMA. And some of them, only played 3 or 4 years. And they're not like us, man. They got beat up. I have surgery in
Yeah.
both shoulders, knee, Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
You got some of these guys that are pretty damn fresh just getting into it.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I can imagine there's probably an age where you can't start after that age for a guy off the street, and for football players. I bet those are different ages.
Yeah, it is, because you walking in and athletically, most football players are going to look good, even against a guy that's been training for a long time. Now, they're always going to lose at the end because of the skill set. Guys are just way
Yeah.
more skilled than you. But I'm telling you, man, I had a guy that if he kept at it, he's not fighting anymore. He just got married, kids, and all that stuff. He got out of the fight business. But Chris McCain, who played outside linebacker for the Chargers, DN, played
Yep.
for the Colts. And this dude was built like John Jones. If
Yeah.
he kept at it, I believe he would have been a world champ. So he decided to go another path. But you're gonna have these new guys that come around and really take this thing serious and become the next world champ.
Is it Antonio Smith?
Nope.
But boy, I would love to see Antonio Smith fight. That dude is awesome. I love Antonio Smith. He's a
Yeah,
beast.
but he's
He's a
another one.
beast. Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so when it comes to these fighters, who's the scariest guy on an NFL field now that you're like, that guy should be fighting when he finishes?
I think any one of those inside linebackers for the Ravens, Queen or Roquan Smith. Um, I
Aaron
look at
Donald
all.
could kill somebody. Aaron Donald, I've
Who's that?
seen Aaron Donald. I've seen Aaron Donald fight in practice. Bro, his hands are incredible. I mean, they're just like, how some guys got hands on the field, but maybe it doesn't translate. This dude is one of the most violent people I've ever seen. I mean, it's incredible. And also, I'd throw in the hat there Mercedes Lewis, because that dude's got length and has been doing it a long time.
So I trained with Mercedes Lewis a long time ago, and we used to train a lot. And I tell people now, you'll find a younger. See, Mercedes was in his 17th, 18th year,
Yeah.
something like that. He's not. He made a
A
ton
little
of money.
bit older, yeah.
Yeah, he made a ton of money, long career. You're not going to get these guys. You're going to get a
Yeah.
younger Mercedes Lewis that was done in 5 or 6 years, didn't get another shot, and say, you know what, I can go make money and build a career doing this. Aaron Donald's another one. I say it all the time. Aaron Donald probably 285, 290. You put him in there with anybody his size at 265, he dropped 20 pounds, he gonna kill anybody because he's used to going against 350-pound linemen. And
Yeah, and he
so
can wrestle.
And so you get these guys with a wrestling background, that violent, that strong, that athletic, to learn how to punch and take people to the ground. Nobody's gonna beat them.
Bro, Robert Quinn was like an all-American wrestler and has length and the whole thing, like super athlete. There's so many of these guys. I mean, it's just so interesting to me because what would like a Aaron Donald purse be? Say Aaron Donald retired this year and wanted to fight a high-profile guy. Like, we're talking millions, right?
Yeah, we can probably get him between $500,000 to $1 million the first time out of cash, and then you would,
Yeah.
if it's pay-per-view, they would have points and things like that on the pay-per-view side. So yeah, he could definitely walk away with 7 figures for sure.
Jeez, that's crazy. And as far as like we talk about the NFL guys, have you been in a room with an MMA guy that you're like, that's a scary guy? Like, obviously there's scary, but there's like another level. Like, who's the scariest MMA guy that you've spent time with?
Sean Strickland.
Oh, I know who that is. White dude?
Yeah, Sean Strickland, the champ right now. He trains over at Extreme Couture, and I bump into him a lot, or I'm training next to him, and I look over him like, man, this cat off. I love him to death. I think he's great.
Off.
I think he's great. I think he's great for the sport. But that cat is off. That dude is off, man. And he's somebody that you don't want to run across in a dark alley, or you want to start some shit with because he's the type that you would have to do something really bad to him to get him to stop, right? Like
Yeah. It seems like a lot of these guys. I mean, what's the weight cutting thing? Like, for that process, because that's really interesting to me, not just in boxing, but in MMA. Like, how intense does it get when you got to cut weight, and what are some of the craziest things you've heard about guys, and maybe unhealthy things when it comes to cutting weight?
Yeah, there's a unhealthy and a healthy way of cutting weight, especially when you're a fighter. I mean, the smart ones diet the whole camp, and then they only got to trim down 10 pounds or so because you're gonna have 10 pounds of water. That's just you not drinking water for 24 hours, sauna, light cardio. You're gonna drop 10 pounds easy. It's the ones like Pereira, right? That fought Izzy. Pereira probably. I think they fought at 185 or something like that. I think they fought at 185. Pereira walks around at like 225. So that kind of cutting is scary and it's very hard to do. But you have these guys, man, that just they're training, and that's the difference too. Now, see, there's money in the sport. We are used as a football player. We're accustomed to off-season workouts, OTAs, mini camps. Yeah. We got about 2 months off max, and not even completely off, just 2 months of the year off, and we're back to it. Now it's money in the sports. These guys now are off-season training. They used to get in shape for their fight. That's it. They used to walk around, guys play video games, eating and drinking and shit, and then they get ready for a fight. Now it's real money in this sport. These guys got therapists and chiropractors and trainers, nutritionists. It wasn't like that in MMA, but now the money is real, so these guys are taking it serious.
What's the deal with this with MMA with doing a little smoking? Do they test guys for that now, or do a lot of the fighters turn to the plant?
They're pretty lenient.
They're pretty lenient on it.
Yeah, they're pretty lenient. But all that shit, even with football and NFL, dude, it's just old school thinking.
It's image.
It's image. It's behind the curve because you look at marijuana and weed as a drug, but we all know, and I play with guys. I wasn't a smoker like that, but I know that it helped out a lot of guys. And
Help me, fuck.
yeah,
Still
it helped out a lot
helping
of
me.
guys.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean the pain's one thing, but then like when you're somebody like me, I'm not gonna sleep. Like I'm gonna sleep like 2 hours. I'm gonna lay in bed for 4 hours until I can't remember when I fell asleep. And if it's not for that, like how do I recover? As a player, how do I do any of that stuff? So when you think about like performance enhancing, like yeah, it does for some people. It can help you in a good, clean way. And so I just imagine fighters with the amount of conflict that they deal with, the amount of pressure. It's a one-man sport. Like the pressure there has got to be crazy. Also freeing a little bit because when we used to fuck up, you had to answer to 52 other guys. But like if you fuck up, it's just you. So that's a different mentality. But just the pressure they're under, I can imagine that would help them.
Yeah, it's night and day, man. You got to think too. These guys are wired different, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're training for a fight and you're in a fight camp, you're walking around on edge.
Yeah.
Like your mind is in a different place. So I think that if guys are able to smoke and go that route, it's going to ease you a lot more, man. You cannot walk around with that mentality. I even joke about it now, and I see the difference. Maybe I'm just older and you step away from the game a little bit, but even then, I was on just this mindset was like going out there and crushing people, and you kind of start living a lifestyle like that, and you're always competing. So I think
that's the hardest thing, dude.
Yes.
About retirement. I think that's what I'm starting to figure out is like we needed a rock to hammer at. Whether it was like competing or football, or we needed the conflict. I think a lot of guys struggle because they don't have anything to take it out on. And for you, like it's good that you have that avenue, right? Like not only as a business owner and somebody who's trying to get something going, but like you can get in the gym and you've got something you can compete at.
Yeah, man. I that's why even if guys don't fight, right? If that take an actual fight, I think that every guy should pick up some form of boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, pummeling, rolling, something. Because we got a different thing with us, man, that we can't just go work be in that cubicle. It'll never happen. That mentality is what drives people crazy, or why guys have problems when they're done, because that switch just don't turn off like that. Now you can dim, when you got the light, you can kind of dim that light down a little bit more over time. But to go from what we did to turn that switch completely off, I think is unsafe.
I think it's fucking awesome that Mr. Lights Out is talking about dimming a light and turning a light back on. That's perfect. If anybody knows lights, it's Shawne Merriman. Here's the other thing I'm wondering. Do we look at these weigh-ins and the promo for fights, and what percentage of the time is it played up? Like how much do these guys really hate each other, and does it ever spill outside?
Yeah, no, big time. Because you guys, just like every field, every industry, you got the asshole, right? And you got the person that needs to be the asshole. It's no different than Skip Bayless going on TV being anti, whatever, right?
Whatever.
You need that guy. So you can feel whatever you want to about these type of guys. Colby Covington, I mean, he said the most ridiculous shit about Leon Edwards' dad before that fight, about his dad being a murderer and all. Like that was an asshole move, right?
Yeah.
But let's be honest, he sold that fight, and as bad as what he did, which I don't condone bringing anybody's family to it. But if you need those Jake Pauls, you need those like type of people in this sport, because ultimately you got a good guy, you got a bad guy, you got people that like that person, you got people that don't like them, and that's what ultimately sells a fight.
So who's a heel, so to speak, in MMA that's actually really fucking cool?
No, I think in a way, man, I think like Izzy Israel Adesanya
Oh,
is
see, I love him. See, I think of him, and maybe it's personal depending on the guy, but I think Izzy's cool as shit. Like, and some people get frustrated with his style of fight, but I'm like, he's the hero. Whoever he's fighting is the villain. So I guess it depends on who's watching.
it's the same thing of like The Rock, right? I mean, The Rock was the best heel we ever seen in WWE. He that was joked on everybody, talked shit to everybody. I mean, the commentators, the broadcasters taking mics out of their phone. He was doing heel shit, but we loved it. We
We
we all
loved it.
love we all love a good heel. No, whether people want to admit it or not, the nice guys and shit are cool. You need that, so the heartwarming people like get a kind of emotional attachment to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the heels is what drive sports, man, and entertainment.
Yeah, I agree with you. The other one for me is you mentioned Jake Paul in a lot of these boxing matches that are like really kind of celebrity or crossover boxing matches. I felt like for a long time Jake Paul was just picking dudes that couldn't stand up, right? But like now I think he's actually a pretty good boxer, man. And I got to give him respect. In the beginning I was like, this seems gimmicky, but I got to respect that grind and his willingness to put himself out there.
I um so Shane Mosley,
Yeah,
former
yeah,
boxer, it was a really good friend of mine, and so he called me. I think it's in 2018, 19, somewhere around there. He called me and said, "Hey, Shawne, come up to my place in Big Bear." Jake Paul and the crew. It was like one of Jake Paul's first or second fight. And I was like, "Shit, man. Okay, cool." So I went up to and stayed at Shane Mosley's house for the week up in Big Bear, and I got there, dude, and I saw Jake Paul working.
yeah,
Hey, we've been around. We know the workers, guys that like just locked in, fucking just go at it, really work hard, bust their ass. We're used to seeing that being around
yeah.
professional athletes basically our whole life. So when I saw him, I said, "Man, this dude's gonna be real." Somebody asked me after. I said, "This dude's gonna be really good one day."
Yeah.
The way he was running hills, he was sparring actually like other pro boxers, and he was getting his ass kicked a little bit, hung in there, took it, taking big shots, returning big shots. And I literally after that, I told everybody, every interview that I had, I said, "Listen, this kid, Jake Paul. Now you can call him an influencer, call him a YouTuber, all this other shit. But I'm just telling you, if you play his cards right, he's going to be really big one day."
Yeah, you were right about that. That guy's got money, and I respect it. The other one was Ngannou fighting Tyson, and
Yeah.
that's 100% a real fight. Now I don't know if Tyson's not training very hard or what, but like, my boxing gym I go to, talking to my trainer George, he's like, he fought pro, and he's like, man, I just like if there's anybody who can teach Ngannou how to do this, it's going to be Tyson. But I just don't see it. Like, it's going to be really hard to fight a fighter this technical and take your first boxing match and look good. And he really looked good. Is that kind of the way you think about football players? Ngannou, the combat sport, changing combat sports. He's a striker, but that's a totally different sport. The athleticism, the power, that guy could play in the NFL. So is that kind of the analogy there? And then were you surprised?
100%. And for sure, I was surprised as hell. And I don't care how much you know about combat sports, boxing, MMA, whatever. Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody would have predicted what happened.
Yeah,
And I don't want to take anything away from Francis. I do think that Tyson walked in probably wasn't training like that. They thought he was going to walk through the guy. He already scheduled a fight after that
yeah,
fight, but
which was kind of disrespectful.
it was disrespectful as hell. And I think that Francis took it that way.
Yeah,
But you got to understand too, man. Like if you look at Francis, he's trained over at Extreme Couture. I remember the day that I met him a couple years ago, and he walked in for sparring. And mind you, Francis is black as hell, right? I mean, Francis is black as hell, and he came in. He had like all blue, like this light blue. And I looked at him and I said, "This dude is built like a DN."
yeah, that's what it
Like
is.
shoulder wise, neck, how his just really brolic,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was like, man, this dude's built like a damn DN slash, three technique, five technique type. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's a big ass dude, and I saw him move, and I said, man, if this dude he can kill somebody, literally. And so you start looking at some of these guys that's in the NFL right now, saying, man, you know what? If you got 2 years of training in, you can make some real money. And that's I'm on a path of that right now, trying to transition some of these guys.
What do you think he walks around at, his heaviest, Ngannou?
300.
God, dog, dude.
Yep.
Fuck, that guy's a beast. All right, well, maybe we'll see another Francis Ngannou out of the NFL, and hopefully it's with lights out. Is there anything else you want people to know about what you got going?
No, that's it, man. We very excited because we just jumped 90% viewership on football, and those type of numbers are unprecedented, man. Like nobody's really doing that, and it's really just having the opportunity to come on platforms like this and talk about it. But I think the other thing too, man, I've been around this sport for a long time, been in TV because I was at Fox Sports and NFL Network and ESPN, so understanding production and TV.
Yeah.
So when I jumped in it, man, we got after it pretty fast, and this growth that we're having is never really been seen in this sport. It's big as the UFC is, we love when the fighters get a chance to go to the UFC. That's great for us. It makes us kind of give us a more of an official stamp, I guess, a little bit. But yeah, for everybody, just watch Saturday, January 6th on Football TV, Football Sports, man, and all the information for our fights at lightsoutxf.com.
Howie Long's birthday, January 6th. I'm going to have Pops watching the fight then. So, Shawne, I appreciate you, man. Always love watching you play. You're the best, dude. I'm wishing you well and hope this stuff keeps taking off.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it, man. You too, man. Keep doing your thing. Killing it.